If power is your ultimate goal, this is the book you need. Welcome back, Mere Mortalites, to another edition of the Mere Mortals book reviews. Yes, you have one here back again, and I've got 48 Laws of Power. This is an oldie, but a goodie. You'd have thought that I would have read this book before. I hadn't actually, so it's reason that I've actually read it. And holy moly, if you can't see this on the video that I'm holding up right now, there is a ton of learnings and summary and notes that I took away from this particular book. 30 all up, which I'll do in a separate session as well. So go check that out when it does come out in terms of the learnings and the summaries and the review that I do on the book. But this is an episode for me to actually just review the book in general. Um, Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. You might have heard about it before from a whole host of people either mentioning, talking about it. It is an older book in terms of, in comparison to the books that I read, but for Karen, it's probably a little puppy. This particular one, the paperback edition, was published in 2000, but it was first published in 1998. So it's coming up to 20 plus years of age, and 25 years, this particular book. But a lot of the things that it still holds are very valid, very applicable. In fact, probably just as much now as it was then, and then going all the way back through history as well. Which probably starts us off in the synopsis of this particular book. So let me just talk about it. First of all, it is a thick boy, 400 plus pages. And not only that, but I'll hold it up to the camera. The way that the book is sort of structured is you have your usual text that it's in the main spacing, as you will, as you'd be reading a book. But he also has Robert put in extra sort of quotes on the sides of the book as well, which generally influence the particular laws that he's writing about as well. So it's usually parables, quotes, other stories that he's obviously leveraged to create the text that he's using as well. I'm going to be honest, I read, let's just say, about 50% of the quotes, parables, and information else on the side, but generally read the main text as well. As the name suggests, 48 Laws of Power is broken down into 48 chapters around the various laws that Robert talks about within each particular chapter, which is quite an interesting thing to see again. And I love this. I guess I like this particular structure. They always follow a particular structure style. So every chapter, and I'll just pick up, say, Law 37 here. I can get the page to actually open. It always begins with the judgment or the little summary piece at the beginning of it, along with the title of it. Then it'll go into either the observance of the law or the breaking of the law. I can't remember exactly how he pronounced it, but it's either an observance or the transgression of the law. And again, then uses a comparison, always historical. And in particular, this particular book leverages a lot of Napoleon, of the kings and queens of England and France and Spain through the 1400s, 1600s, 1800s, a lot of Chinese historical context as well, and some Stoic old Greek context as well. So it was quite nice in the sense that a lot of the books that I read, either be it self-help or other forms, it's usually Stoicism or a little bit of old Chinese culture that it references. I hadn't really read a book that influenced or pulled out a lot of things from the I, another influence of this particular book is Machiavelli's writing, but the old sort of kings and queens and its middle, 1200 to 1800 periods. I've never really seen a lot of historical context yet pulled out in the books that I read lately, and so it was actually really nice to see. But beyond the observance of the law, then there's usually a quote, and it's usually either by some sort of king or queen, the particular historical context that Robert leverages, but very, very often it's a Machiavelli quote or Gracian Balthasar. I forget exactly what his name is. Then you've got a keys to power. In essence, Robert sort of talking about, what do you need to do to gain that particular power of the law that he's sort of talking about. And then the chapters will usually finish with two things, and I'll talk about this particular structure because it is very interesting. What he calls the image and the authority, image and authority, which the entire book is in general black text, but he uses red text through it and I don't know if this is in all books, but he uses red text almost as a bit of a stepping point of something very specific. Also, the red text is used on the side of the book for those quotes and parables that he's sort of referencing. But the image and the authority image for every single law gives you a, I'll give you an example here of this particular law: the cross and the sun, crucifixion and total radiance, and a bit more, but it's in the shape of a sun, or at least a circle. So it kind of tries to place imagery and the text all in one to help you remember. Now, I read this 3 weeks ago, and there are some images that still stick in my mind, and some of the laws that still stick in my mind in terms of how I was reading it. But I wouldn't be able to call out all of them. However, it was really good in the moment to kind of place the image or the object at hand into the actual text as well. The other one was, and then afterwards is the authority. And generally, this is a Machiavelli quote, or someone similar that he's gotten those referencing to Robert to create this book. And so for this one, the authority here is Niccolo Machiavelli. And again, it's just around a quote directly from another text, usually again from the 1400s to the 1600s. Sometimes maybe might be an old one. Sometimes it's a God quote, Jesus quote. It's quite interesting the way that he places it. But the last bit that he finishes of a chapter, because I've always had this complaint around books, when they put a really strong proposition forward, right, really hard ideas, and they're not held loosely, because you don't, it's the idea is just placed as hard as it can possibly be. You don't know if there's any deviation or balance to that. But he always finishes on with a reversal piece, or little side of the chapter. And every single one of these laws finishes off with a reversal, which gives you an indication Robert has put through all of the reasons as to why you would observe, what a transgression to the law would be, what the key to the power is, why it's great for it, etc. And then finishes it off with, yes, but can you reverse this for whatever reason? And that's probably in another way said as, is there a way to, is there a dichotomy? Is there a balance? Is there an extreme that you probably can't cross? Usually the reversals are more of, yes, this law is great and here's how it's been applied in lots of different ways. However, don't go too far, or perhaps you might need to go the other way if certain circumstances happen. It's that old consulting thing to say of, well, it depends, okay? It depends on the actual situation and the context. There are some, which that particular law 37, which is closed on me now, this particular book, but there are some which he will call out. There is no reversal to the law that he has placed. Now, is that completely correct? Can you find other transgressions or maybe reversals of it? Some of them I could have said that you could find some reversals, but all in all, I think the way that at least the structure of the book is placed, with all of those laws having that nice, clear, transgression, observance, what it is in terms of obtaining that particular power, what it means from the historical context, from the quotes, all the way down to placing the imagery, the authority, and the reversal if there's any. Brilliant. Just absolutely loved that perspective as well. Robert himself, probably just jumping back, Robert has done a couple of other books. It's sitting here in the front of this particular copy in any case. Art of Seduction, 33 Strategies of War. He's done 51. He's on a book with 50 Cent. I can't remember what exactly it is, but it's like 51 something laws of money or something else, right? So he's done quite a few books that are in relation to this. And one of the big hates that this particular book gets, I get to see quite often, is, oh wow, and before coming into reading this book, I went, I sense that people say, oh, it's a bit of a dangerous book. You don't want to read it or share it too broadly. And so there's two camps that I've always heard. It's either people blessing it and saying, wow, it's a great book, you really got to read it. And I was going, nah, that should be shunned away. Don't read that. Don't give it to the wrong people in some regards. Now, as I read it, and this is just an overall view of the book. Yes, the 48 Laws of Power are in large parts. There are some aspects where you go, well, even for me, as I started even just reading the chapters and some of the breakdown of it, of the laws, I was kind of like, oh man, is this really something that he goes into the detail, and it very much goes into detail, and it's very interesting. Um, and I would say on the whole, overall, it's not a bad thing to read this particular book, and I think it is a learning experience, but you have to come at it with a very, let's say, good intent or good heart to it. I can very well see how a book like this in the hands of someone who has malintent or has manipulative qualities. The triad, I believe it is as well, of I forget now, but you have bad intent. I can see that this would be a an energetic way to get you down the wrong path. So I'll read you a couple of the laws just to give you an idea of which ones are you'd expect to sort of read about this, and others where you'd be like, well, okay, are you really pushing this on people? Never outshine the master, which is law one. Okay, fair. I think we can all get away with that. Would make sense. Law four, always say less than necessary. Again, it's sort of a good piece of advice. Again, going into the details, that was great. Court attention at all costs is law six. So attention seeking, and I'll read this one in particular. Everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing. Never let yourself get lost in the crowd, then, or buried in oblivion. Stand out, be conspicuous at all cost. So even just reading that, I start getting a little bit of a, ooh, so is that true? Do you really want to live like this? Again, remembering coming in from the angle of its power. There's application to the power that is being described here, whether you apply it or not, whether it's for everyday life, you obviously pick and choose. But then there's items like these, and I think this is where probably people might have a conversation of this book on like, oh, okay, maybe you don't want to go down that path. Conceal your intentions. Keep people off balance and in the dark by never revealing the purpose behind your actions. If they have no time, if they have no clue what you are up to, they cannot prepare a defense. So that's law three. And reading that, does that not make you go, ooh, like concealing your intentions? That feels icky. That feels like you shouldn't do that. That feels non-transparent. To those who maybe apply for the idea of, want to be truth seeking and talk the truth and everything else, or at least not being transparent with your partner, with your kids, with your family. Does concealing your identity, apply everywhere? Do you really want to do that? Again, the reversal in that particular one, I think, was fairly strong. And again, Robert, does a really great job in detailing where in the historical context might be applicable, where if you want to obtain this, and see, there's a key thing. It kind of describes how you may go about getting all these various powers. Again, it's not foolproof. You're not going to get it just by reading this and using it. But man, it's getting you closer to that effective philosophy of how to go about and doing it. And I think that's what scares a few people. So the book is not an instructional piece to be able to obviously become such a degenerate in that type of thinking. However, it does get you a little bit of step closer towards that. Now, if you look at it from the angle, though, in this particular book of, yes, but there's going to be a lot of learnings to that, potentially for you to see those powers being applied elsewhere. Again, something recently in a political front, won't talk the details because, I want this to be a long form content piece that can live on forever. But something politically happened where someone was referencing, if they had followed that law one, where, observe the master, it wouldn't have spiraled out of control down that path. So some of those things you can see it would be beneficial to be applied in sort of everyday life. Some of them are, you might apply that particular power in avoidance for something even worse. But sometimes, and let's just say 10 of the powers that I read in that particular book are more, holy heck, that's not things that I want to personally aspire to or apply or even get the keys to power. However, it is something that I can spot in other people or how they might be applying it both consciously, but really often just subconsciously, unconsciously, and going, I can see that they're expressing this sort of behavior to try to get this, what they want, which, that will claim them power. How might you position yourself or just be observant whether, one, you even want to engage with that or not? Or two, if you need to, how might you handle that? How might you not manipulate, although you could call it manipulate, but how could you influence and dance around that particular individual, entity, interaction, questions, conversations to better either the position of yourself, both, etc. So look, 48 Laws of Power, while a big, thick book, and it is heavy, I think it's revealing in that Robert just went out there and put together a very transparent, a very historically bound piece of material that really has stood the test of time since 1998 all the way now to 2025 when I'm recording this. And I could see myself not rereading it, but I could see just referencing a couple of laws or rereading just a little short excerpts that come around with it. I really, really enjoyed this book. I very meticulously took notes. As again, 30 notes there that I at least tabbed, and plenty more that I wrote down elsewhere as well. I fully recommend for people to take this and read it. I would I would only say if you have a propensity for bad things, for being Machiavellian, for maybe straying towards the dark side and manipulating people heavily, be wary of reading something like this, because I think you're going to take it as almost an instructional thing to go even worse. But on the broader nature, if you want to just learn about power and the various dynamics that humans interact with, I think it's a good thing. Some of the, and I wrote this down here, some of the books that I'd probably similar or recommend and around this. Some of these Karen has read as well. The Art of War by Sun Tzu, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and The Prince by Machiavelli, which, both of those books analyze power, and a gigantic amount of information, I think, and summarization comes here from Robert Greene of that book, from The Prince by Machiavelli. Yeah, look, finally, it was a really readable book. It was an easy read. Even though long, it kept me really wanting to just go again and again and again to continue reading it through. I think it was because especially those transgressions and observances of the law were written really nicely as short pieces of history, but in a story. And that story kept me wanting to, okay, I want to read the next one, and I want to understand what the transgression of the observance. It was informational, had a lot of effective philosophy. I took away, again, ton of learnings. Totally recommend. At least an 8 out of 10 for me personally. So, Me Immortalized, I will leave it there. 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. If you've read this, given it's been out for a long time, let me know. What are your thoughts? Comments, send me a message, go into the Discord. If you want to support us, we're a Value for Value show. So commenting, sending this to your friends, sending it through a boostergram, going into the PayPal and sending through some links there. Any of those things really do support. Of course, if you aren't subscribed to us, that would be amazing. That really, really does help. So if you can, please do so. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in. Me and Mortal Lights. Be well. One out.